Hello everyone, my name is Christoph Müller and I'm making videos for the Ukraine here on YouTube. I'm married to a Ukrainian woman. I know more about Ukraine than the average German maybe, but it's way not enough about this beautiful people who is ruthlessly being attacked by Russia already since such a long time, not only since February 22. I'm very pleased talking today already for the second time with Sergej Sumlenny, a Russian origin but pro-Ukrainian scholar and activist. He is based in Berlin, he's got a PhD, German citizenship, and he's the founder of the European Resilience Center. Hello, Sergej Sumlenny.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this invitation and this introduction. And it's a huge honor and a big pleasure, as always, to be your guest. Thank you for what you do.
You grew up in Russia, you have been raised in Russia, you know all that propaganda and stuff. What made it for you to understand, wow, something is going wrong here?
The very fundamental reason why I stay on Ukraine's side, because I was born in the Soviet Union, I was raised in Russia, and I used to be a Russian citizen until 2012. And I know the reasons which Russia has for this war and the goals Russia has. The goals Russia has as a Russian society, Russian statehood, is a total annihilation of Ukraine, genocide.
Yeah.
And it's not about like some things like security guarantees or territory goals or like some economic advantage. No, it's pure and clear genocide, annihilation of the Ukrainian nation. And as a German citizen by choice, which I am for over a decade, now Germany was another country which perceived the same goal in the 20th century: annihilation of the Ukrainian nation, eradication of the Ukrainians, enslavement of Ukraine.
Yes.
I see there is no other duty for me in this war as to stay on Ukraine's side and to help Ukrainians to fight back this unjustified and illegal war of aggression and of genocide.
Wow, that is a really honorable thing what you have in your mind, and I can admit that I really feel the same. I have also this feeling, being a German, and I know about German history. Yeah, compared to the German history, the Russians, they had never lost a war up to now. Maybe let's.
The Russians have many times. That is a very popular belief which Russians want the West to believe into, that Russia is undefeatable. First, Russia is pretty much defeatable. If you look at the 20th century, 1905, Russo-Japanese War, Russian Empire has lost it. 1917, Russia was a member of the victorious Entente Union with France and United Kingdom against Germany and Austria-Hungary, and still lost this war. One needs to be able to be that a loser. The Russians have lost the war and got this internal revolution, etc., in 1917 when the German Empire was on the brink of collapse. Then, 1940, the Soviet Union has lost Soviet-Finnish War, couldn't achieve any goal, has suffered from incredible losses.
Yeah, okay.
Then you can go even further. You can remember the Afghan War of the Soviet Union, 1980 until 1989. Total defeat and retreat from Afghanistan, which led effectively to collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. Even if you think about Russo-Ukrainian War of 2014, 2015, the goals which Russia set in that war were to conquer the whole southeast and south of Ukraine, to achieve a land corridor to Transnistria, to Moldova. Nothing achieved. Yes, Crimea was occupied. Yes, parts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions were occupied, but it was nothing compared to the plans of Russia. That even if we don't count this like semi-defeat, semi-victory cases, and the Russo-Ukrainian war is not over, Russo-Japanese War lost, Russia lost territories. First World War, Russia lost it. Soviet-Finnish War, total defeat. Afghan War, lost. And if you think about the World War II, first, it's impossible to say Russia won that war. It was not Russia, it was the Soviet Union, strengthened by all Soviet republics, millions and millions of Ukrainian soldiers, territory, Belarusians, Central Asia, Caucasus, etc. And I'm very sorry to mention it, the half of world GDP was the GDP of the United States.
Of
And the
course.
United States has delivered tens of thousands of trucks, tanks, airplanes, millions of tons of steel, aluminium, copper,
Tell, tell, tell,
magnesium,
tell.
oil, everything.
Yeah,
And then the Soviets say, or the Russians now say, we won this war. No, you have not won this war. The Allies have won this war, and
Yeah.
you were only one of the countries of the Allies, together with the United Kingdom, with the United States, together with other nations. You have won this war as an ally.
Yeah.
Show
Tell this.
me one case when you try to fight a war alone and won it, and you will name nothing,
Yeah.
nothing in the least.
But compared to the loss of the defeat of a country, what Hitler Germany suffered, and it's good that they suffered it. It's not comparable to that, because Hitler was completely destroyed and Germany was divided. A thing like that, I think it would be also, from my point of view, not be bad for Russia to wake up.
I think it would be not bad for Russia and for the world. The problem is that I don't believe that any nation today would be ready to implement such a decision, because physical occupation of Russia would cost immense number of troops and power and energy, and you will need to really like take care of the whole country. What was good in occupation of West Germany, that the whole country was relaunched with a goal to make Germans sufferable again. Like to make Germans to a nation which you can have as a neighbor.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of them anymore. And this like the result was success. We can say that the current German state has several birth traumata. That we have this legal system which practically doesn't allow us to act decisively in a case of war, but that was intended to do so. That was intended to be that way. Like the German state is very indecisive and very slow for a good reason, because we have seen before how Germany easily started wars because of ability to concentrate power in one hand. In other things, like Germany is a state with functioning law system. Germany is peaceful country. Germany is maybe sometimes too peaceful. Germany is a country which respects their neighbors. Of course, many neighbors would say, "Oh no, like Germans are arrogant." Okay, compare it to Germans from 1930s. Okay, and that was a success. But the amount of resources which the Allies invested into it were huge, and the goal was to have Germany on the side of the Western democracies in order to have the bulwark against the Soviet expansion. And the territory was pretty small. Like, one thing is to protect the narrow stripe of Western Germany, 800 kilometers from north to south, and maybe 400 kilometers from east to west, and occupy it. Three nations occupy it: France, United Kingdom, and United States, and compare it to the vast landscapes of Russia. Even if the population is comparable of Western territory, European territory of Russia, the population is comparable to Germany, but the size is huge, and it seems that there is no reason to do it, because, okay, against whom should we protect ourselves? So will China come to the Urals mountain? I doubt so. So Russia will be left, most probably, again, to itself, as it has been done in 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when everyone believed that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia will cure itself, that the history is over. That's what Fukuyama said, the end of the history. Nothing happens anymore. Let's give Ukrainian nukes to Russia. They're good now. And that was a mistake. But what is alternative to letting Russia try to recover by their own? We know it will not work, but occupation doesn't work too. So from my perspective, and we can talk later about it if you'd like to, from my perspective, the only functioning way out of this misery, out of this dilemma, occupation impossible, self recovery is impossible too. The only way out is to help nations colonized by Russia, also in central Russia, like Tatars, Bashkirs, Mordvins, Erzak, Karelians, and others, to emancipate and to create their independent states.
Yeah.
In this case, it is a way out, and we can also address the fears like nuclear proliferation, civil war, chaos, etc. Nothing of this will happen. Nothing, and I can explain why. And this is the only functional way to bring finally peace to this territory and to make this area the source of the worst aggressions and terrorist regimes for the world for the last, let me say, 3 centuries, will finally find peace and finally stop and cease being a threat to the whole world.
To come to this point, maybe the world, and Ukraine especially, has to go through more horrible moments than they have still had now, I guess. Otherwise, the collapse of Russia, or the liberation or the independence of, or the emancipation of these peoples inside Russia will not happen if they don't feel some really threat. And but let's go back. Let's go a little bit into the current situation of the war. And I would like to show you a little video from Bild Lagezentrum, which I've seen today. Just so.
And want to take a look at how and what exactly the Ukrainian army has been doing there in the last 21 days. And if we internalize these recordings from the past few days, we realize that at the latest since the beginning, namely critical targets here we now within Russia. And we have internalized this. We look at the map, see the front line here within Ukraine once again. But now let's zoom out a bit and see how massive, how large Russia, of course, is. We remember Ukraine is 2.5 times the size of Germany. And now we can clearly observe the targets that were attacked. We have a variety of targets directly indicated, of course, with these small explosion visuals depicted here. That means Smolensk was attacked last night. Here we see it as just one of the cities. However, we had attacks that were more than 1,000 kilometers away from Ukraine. For instance, up here, Ost-Luga, a loading port of the Russian merchant navy, but also in Nizhnekamsk and Kazan. And we just observed Saratov. That was indeed the airport that was attacked over there. This signifies that we are witnessing Ukrainian drone attacks actively targeting the border regions at this moment. We have Belgorod, we have Kursk, we have Smolensk, and also, of course, we have cities like Bryansk and Voronezh, basically all the oblasts that are bordering Ukraine or situated very nearby. In the south, of course, also with Rostov. We also have some Ukrainian attacks that, since the beginning of the year, just in the last 21 days alone, have gone significantly further beyond that.
You can see Ukraine here and the whole distance and the vastness of the Russian territory, and you see all those arrows where the attacks of Ukrainian drones are flying to, and you know exactly what they did, the Ukrainians. And that brings me to the question, if we here in Germany, and not only we in Germany, also the United States and many, we are so afraid of Russia and not delivering weapons to Ukraine to defend itself. Very, very slowly. We know all these stories about the tanks which don't come. We know the story about the 5,000 helmets in the beginning, what the German government delivered to Ukraine. Is Germany, is the world so afraid of Russia that they don't do anything? And shouldn't they learn from Ukraine how to behave with Russia, just defeat them? Why are especially we Germans so afraid of Russia?
I don't think it's about being afraid.
Okay.
I think it is a comfortable explanation that our politicians say, okay, when we do this, Russia would attack us. and want to avoid it. That's why we will not do it. It's illogical. It's illogical because as Russia expands its area of influence, of control, and the territory it physically occupies towards the West, and Russia has clearly declared their goals to control our countries and to attack us if needed. The passivity of our governments just increases the level of this danger because we provide Russia with our passivity, with more resources, with more skills, and more. We encourage the Russians to do what they're doing. So it's not a fear of Russia, because the fear would have forced our politicians to prepare for a war, at least to defend our territories, to buy more weapons, to develop new types of weapons. Like, think that our German government has not ordered, has never delivered Taurus to Ukraine, Taurus cruise missiles, but has also never ordered new Taurus missiles for our stocks. So we don't increase our stocks of Taurus for the case when, let me say, Russia would come to an idea to directly threaten us with armament. We know that Russian intelligence services are already operating very aggressively in Germany, killing our people, organizing terrorist attacks on our military bases, launching their surveillance drones over our military bases, hacking our governmental facilities, etc., etc. So it is not about being afraid of Russia. Because once again, if our governments would have been afraid of Russian threat, maybe they will not support Ukraine. I think it's wrong, but at least they would have increased our military production to be prepared for an attack. Yeah. I think it is about supporting Russia in their hearts. I think that our German Chancellor Scholz and his SPD, Social Democratic Party, actually like what Russia is doing. They have nothing against it. And they think that it is good for them that Russia overtakes Ukraine. I think that it is about looking at Ukraine as at a legitimate property of Russia. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it belongs to a good old order of things that Russia controls Ukraine because it's their property, it's their colony. It's like something the European nations met in Berlin in end of the 19th century at Berlin Conference and said, okay, you take Tanzania, I take Libya, you take Congo, I take Mozambique. So they have divided the whole African continent. Wow. And that is, I think, still the way of thinking, like, Ukraine is Russia's domain. We will not interfere there. And that's why all these calls from the German politicians and some German analysts, like some professors from German universities, love to say, yeah, Ukraine must understand that they cannot run around shouting that they have full sovereignty. So that is one reason. And another reason is that I think that the German politicians Germany was severely beaten in World War II. And we know that for us, it ended very bad, our imperial ambitions and their implementation. But I think that some politicians, when they look at Russia, they think somewhere deep in their heart, well, we'd like to have done it. We'd like to be able to act the same. We may not, unfortunately. We're not allowed to, we're not capable to, but it should feel good to just send the troops to the neighboring country and act like the bosses. We cannot do it, but we can support Russia in that because they are our old bodies. We have divided Europe 3 times with them, Poland 3 times in 18th century. Then Hitler and Stalin divided Europe once again. And then it was like it came to this natural agreements on gas and on all resources. And we know like what was written in the reports of the Soviet intelligence in early 1970s when the gas deal with West Germany was signed, and the West German government allowed the Soviet Union to fund Soviet economy with all these gas transfers. And these all reports, they are open and you can read them. And in the note to the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, uh, it was written that the gas contract, the gas deal with the Western German government allows the Soviet Union to incredibly increase influence and control over the Western German economy, especially in such a vulnerable area as energy. And that was absolutely understandable for the Soviets. And there was nothing written there in that analysis that Germany controls Soviet Union with some money flow. That's what we got in Germany all the time, being told by the politicians, like mutual dependencies, Wandel durch Handel, change through trade. When both sides have trade, we influence each other, we will influence Russia and implement democratic changes. The Soviets understood that it doesn't work that way. When a democracy, an autocracy, or a tyranny have an important deal, trade deal, tyranny doesn't change, because tyranny can implement their rules on that deal and they can block the influence. But democracy gets corrupted. And that is what we have experienced. And that's how I think our political elite started to get corrupted from the 1970s. And this corruption goes through all the parties, not only the Social Democrats. And when I say corruption, I don't mean like direct, banal, and basic things like bribes or something. It's actually not like it's like it happens. I think when I say corruption, I say about the destruction and distortion and damaging of processes of decision making, setting false priorities for the political decisions, over prioritizing private benefits or benefits of smaller groups like parties or business circles instead of prioritizing the common goods like peace, security, stability, democracy, and using the power of public offices and public money and lawmaking to fulfill or to implement this narrow-minded, unrelated to the greater good, unrelated priorities, and which makes us as a country, as a nation, weaker in face of an aggressive totalitarian regime, which openly says that their goal is to destroy European democracy.
But that sounds really convincing. And I think we are really, as democracies, as we see now, in really great danger. Do you see any solution for us as democracies to stop this development? We just saw Donald Trump now being elected as president in the United States. And we here in Germany have also the right-wing parties, and also Wagenknecht, which is something else. For me, she is also nothing else than a Trojan horse of Putin. And the rise of these parties here in Germany, but also in the other countries, there are a lot of signs that the Russians, they get what they want. They get us, how to say, dissolved. Do you see any possibility to stop this bad development or turn it around? How to counter that?
Well, it's a very hard question, and I'm afraid I don't have a single answer for this.
Of course.
I think that okay, our good for us is that Russia is not omnipotent,
Of course.
and Russia is weak on many areas. Economically, militarily, it's not as strong as they want to. to be perceived, because like they always want to appear stronger than they are.
Yeah.
So you think, okay, I better don't intervene, I better don't fight back. But they are corrupt, and corruption in Russia is very good. That's why I personally think that all anti-corruption initiatives in Russia are efficiently enemies of freedom, because you cannot fight corruption in a tyranny. You need support corruption in a tyranny, as corruption destroys the state. Just think about the case of Oskar Schindler.
Mm-hmm.
Oskar Schindler decided to bribe a murderous, psychopathic commander of a concentration camp, of a death camp, Amon Goeth, and paid him in cash for each Jew this Amon Goeth allowed to get out from the camp to Oskar Schindler's factory, where the Jews were saved until the end of the war and survived.
Mm-hmm.
And he has saved many hundreds of people through this corrupt scheme.
Yeah.
So now imagine that in Krakow, a cell of Navalny activists appear in 1943, and they start to and they work only with corruption, and they say, yes, we are against the war because this Hitler's war was started by corruption, and Hitler wanted to cover his economic fuck-ups and all these economic problems. That's why he started this war. That's why we need to stop the corruption. Goering is corrupt. Himmler is corrupt. All other commanders of death camps are corrupt. We need to expose their corruption to show the Germans that the money gets stolen. So now let's create an article. Like YouTube was not available back then. Let's publish leaflets about corrupt commander Amon Goeth, who, instead of fulfilling his duty and guarding the camp, sells Jews to Oskar Schindler, a fabricant, like a businessman who uses them for his enrichment in his factory. Isn't it really sick? Like, it doesn't even sound like a bad comedy. It is absolutely impossible to imagine that such people who would say, oh, that is terrible, a corrupt commander of a death camp sells Jews to corrupt businessmen, we need to stop it. The law must be fulfilled. The Jews must remain in a camp. Just think about it. And now look at what Navalny did. Like in 2023, the one of the most popular YouTube videos on corruption in Russia, published by Maria Pavchik, the lieutenant of back then alive Navalny, was named literally "Who Steals Money in Russia's production of missiles." So they really were looking for the cases of embezzlement in production of cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. And they have helped Russia to find out where military budgets are being spent not for the missile production, but for buying of yachts or sport cars or anything else. From my perspective, until this war is over and these people got in jail, all these military producers of Russia, it is better that they take every single ruble which they get from Moscow and buy them champagne and luxury cars and spend it on their villas. Because as less money they invest into missile production, they're better for everyone. But for the Navalny's, it was corruption, terrible, must be fought back. And Putin has fought corruption back in that particular area, and Russia produces much more missiles per month than before this Maria Pavchik's research. So bravo, Maria. You have helped Vladimir Putin to fight corruption and to kill more Ukrainians. Are you happy now? And that is the reason why we need to understand we are in war. We are in war. And we need to see Russia as our enemy because Russia already sees us as an enemy.
Of course, yeah.
And we need, like in every war, we need to support anything what makes our enemy weaker. You don't want Russian economy be efficient. You want inflation. You want a reduction of industry production. You want corruption. You want misunderstandings. You want everything what makes your enemy weaker. Because Russia has never hit their plans, and now they show it openly. They kill people. They kill people in hundreds of thousands. They occupy territories. They make statements that they will attack another country, and another country, and another country. It will not stop until this state is defeated.
Yeah.
And you cannot defeat the state by helping it be more efficient and more transparent and like function on a more economic way.
Thank you very much for this great comparison with Oskar Schindler. I never thought about that. Great, thanks a lot for that. Let's get back to this picture again. Here you see Ukraine bravely defending itself, small country which is in fact 2 times bigger than Germany, and fighting against the super big country Russia, and showing the world that Russia is defeatable. And the rest of the world is not doing the right thing on the military way. And so I wonder, is the real strength of Russia not to dissolve the Western democracies? That is the main target they have. So we are at war. We are in the West at war already, in the hybrid war, and in the information war, the propaganda war, and the cut cables in the Baltic Sea. And we are at war, but we don't realize it. We don't talk about it. We don't show this in our news. And if you now see the election campaign in Germany, there will be elections very soon. They just don't mention the war at all. They don't talk about it anymore. So has Russia not won already against us? How do you see this?
Russia is definitely trying to play a long game and believes that they can outplay us by playing long. Democracies have indeed very short breath. We have elections all the time. We are either before elections or after elections, or like we have in Germany now, we have preliminary elections. And if we don't have national elections, we have regional elections, or we have European Parliament elections, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And as a European Union, of course, we are forced to take some decisions unanimously, like the sanctions decisions, when one country like Hungary or Slovakia suddenly says no, then we need to invest a lot of resources into convincing them to join the mainstream, etc. So it's always complicated. And the autocracy or tyranny has much more, I would say, not a process that is completely free of obstacles, but a much straighter and much easier way to go to their things. That does make autocracy stronger or on a long perspective, because the lack of feedback makes the whole system more vulnerable on a long run perspective. But it makes them stronger in a short term or mid-term conflict with democracy, against democracy. And of course, Russia uses all the resources the Soviet Union has produced for, including Ukrainian factories and Belarusian factories, etc., which the Soviet regime produced for half a century after World War II, practically preparing for the World War. And now this World War is running. So the Soviet Union produced thousands and thousands, like about, I think, 20 up to 30,000 of battle tanks, which were stored in facilities, and fuel storages, and food storages, and all the things, artillery, IFVs, and then after the collapse of the Soviet Union, such countries like Ukraine were forced by the US, also by Senator Obama back then, to give a large amount of weapons to Russia. And I don't talk only about the nukes, which Ukraine forced to send to Russia, but I talk about very conventional arms like cruise missiles, which now Russia fires at Ukraine. Ukraine has given to Russia, I think, 500 to 800. I can be wrong here, but it's definitely several hundreds of cruise missiles. Germany has never provided one single cruise missile. Ukraine has provided Russia with 5 up to 800 cruise missiles back then. Strategic bombers, which are being used as launching platforms for these missiles now, like several strategic bombers, etc., etc. So Russia was pumped completely with weapons, and Russia has all the stockpiles of weapons, which Russia massively burns in Ukraine in a hope that the price will be so massive that it is worth destroying all this equipment. And one need to look from the following perspective. One often says Russia is like acts illogically, weird, reckless, stupid. No, doesn't. You have done a huge investment which led you to produce like 30,000 of battle tanks and other equipment comparable to the scale to arm enough tank divisions for a war. And your equipment is being constructed the way in the Soviet Union when you didn't care about soldiers, because Soviet Union had 270, 280 million inhabitants compared to Russia now 140 million inhabitants, because the Soviet Union had all the Asian, like Central Asian nations, Ukraine, Belarus, Baltics, Caucasus. So the idea was to burn the soldiers, like not care about their education, just put them into the tank and send and burn them. So now you come to a situation when this equipment being produced like 40, 50 years ago and developed, like some of Russian tanks they use now, they have been, the development started during the World War II. Like T-64 or 62, they are tanks which practically just the redesigning of the tanks designed in the later years of World War II.
World War II, yeah.
So now you have all this equipment produced and stored, and they can be operated effectively only in huge numbers and with very unskilled teams, because you don't have that much skilled teams. You cannot educate them all. And you know that in the next, let me say, 10, 15 years, these tanks will be useless anyway, because they just will be destroyed by natural reasons. You cannot store a tank for longer than a certain period of time if you store it somewhere in Siberia under the blue sky. And you have a choice, a very simple choice. Either you start a war and use them, and then you can be paid back by the price. Control of Ukraine, control of Poland, control of the Baltics. Or you can see how your investment disappears in front of your eyes without any reason. It turns into bunch of scrap metal. What would you do? You have weapons which were constructed for one reason only, very simple: conquer the world. Use it. And then you see who can operate these tanks. You need to have a lot of unskilled people. So you find them. It's very simple. It's not a rocket science. The West always said, oh, Russia is so mysterious. Russia is so complicated to understand. Russia is so deep soul with so many layers, patterns, as Churchill said, this mystery wrapped in a charada, etc. I don't remember the full quote, but it was like also that fascination. It is not. It's plain and simple. It's plain and simple, like a Kalashnikov assault gun.
Yeah, okay.
You just need to have different priorities. You just need to stop thinking as a Western politician. You just need to start thinking like a Russian Tsar or a General Secretary of Communist Party or a Russian dictator naming himself president. It's about other things, other priorities, other distribution of your responsibilities and the loyalties of your people towards
Yep.
you. And as soon as you start to see people that way, you will understand that for Russians, this situation is natural. They act naturally. That's why there is no rejection of this war in the Russian nation.
Is it true? Is it true, Sergey, is that Russia never had an enemy like this, a dream enemy? I guess that Europeans, especially Germans, are really dream enemies for any dictator like Putin. Every dictator dreams of an enemy who does not defend himself, lays himself down on the back and says, "Here, please, don't hurt me because I don't do you." And when you look in the past, the enemy understands his opponent, but here I have the opposite feeling.
Yes, it is exactly what George Orwell wrote in his essay about pacifism, saying that pacifism is one of the forms of supporting tyranny.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
pacifism cannot exist in tyranny. Pacifists will be prosecuted and put into jail or executed, like it happened in the Third Reich, for example.
Yeah, but also
But
being,
pacifism can exist in democracy very well.
yeah,
And in democracy, it weakens democracy's ability to defend itself.
so it
And
comes back to tyranny.
exactly. And a neighboring tyranny is happy when neighboring democracies have pacifists, because pacifists are natural allies of any aggressive tyranny. They will be executed anyway after the occupation, but they don't know it. Maybe they're not educated enough.
Oh.
And that is the reality of things. So for Russia, of course, it is pretty good that the Western support was so reluctant and so full of all limitations imposed by the Western nations on Ukraine, how to use the weapon provided, where to use, and. At the same time, when we look at Russian rhetorics, Russians explain themselves that they are fighting against the whole world, that they are fighting against the US mercenaries in Ukraine, that they are fighting against Western mercenaries in Ukraine, that the whole world is fighting against them. It makes them feel, it helps them feel that they are first fighting an war, existential war, and second to explain why Ukraine is so effective in fighting back. Because the Ukrainians are seen in Russia as subhumans, as Untermenschen, incapable for anything strong. Just imagine, like you believe, and the Russians believe they will just march into Ukraine, and in 72 hours, Ukraine will be no more. German politicians believed it too, by the way. So when the Russians faced resistance and they were fought back and stopped, they had to explain to themselves why it happened. So they started to invent all the stories about secret American military bases in Ukraine. Like Joe Biden would kill himself even imagining that the US army fights in Ukraine. But the Russians believe that there were a lot of American soldiers fighting in Ukraine, because otherwise you cannot explain how could Ukrainians, who were pictured in Russia as stupid peasants and cowards,
Yep.
how could they have like destroyed Russia's elite troops? And that is this dichotomy, this is dualism of Russia's perception of the world. This mixture of complex of superiority with the complex of inferiority. It's like, I think that this shake but not steer principle of James Bond making his cocktails applies very much to Russia's perception of themselves, a mixture in these two complexes of inferiority and superiority. They coexist in the same head. We are dealing practically with the mentality which is pretty much schizophrenic.
Shake but not stir. Yeah, Sergey, that is so interesting talking to you all the time. And I guess in fact, I wanted to having talked about drones, but let's skip this topic for today. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we should stop our discussion here at this point.
Thank you, Christoph. It's always a pleasure to be your guest, and thank you so much for this invitation. And thank you that you stand on Ukraine's side. It's extremely important for Ukraine to have allies in the world. And we know both that German people, average Germans, are much stronger supporters of Ukraine than our government and our Chancellor Scholz. So Ukrainians know that, we know that, and we just need to continue supporting Ukraine, also because it's in our own interests. We will be the next if Ukraine fails.
Yeah, yeah, thanks a lot. Let's talk also about the election for the next time, maybe. So all the best to you, Sergey, and take care. Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank you.